Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Always Chasing After Something. This will be Part 6, Chapter 4. Even though Shota's participation in the practical exam was over, he still had to stick around campus to wait for Hisashi to finish with 1B's exams. He and Vlad had decided not to participate with each other's classes, and he'd been looking forward to taking the afternoon to review his class's exams and make final plans for the summer training camp. However, now he had 2 kids tagging along with him today, and he felt bad making them hang around all afternoon when he could drive them back to the apartment. There were 2 problems with that plan. Well, technically 3. Problem number 1 was getting the keys from Hisashi, who didn't trust Shota to drive safely. Problems 2 and 3 were All Might and Recovery Girl cornering him after the last exam and dragging him aside to the infirmary station. The weirdest ambush he'd ever been caught in, truly. "What is this about?" Shota asked. He chose to stand while All Might sat on the edge of a bed and Recovery Girl sat on her stool. The door had been firmly shut behind them. "That boy, Isuku," All Might said. You'd think a whole term would have been enough for Shota to get used to seeing this skinny, gaunt form of the number 1 hero, but it was still jarring. His mind always took a solid minute to catch up with reality every time this sickly-looking person spoke. "What do you know of his past?" Shota blinked. The back of his mind raced with questions. Why did All Might want to know about Isuku? "Not much. Only some theories. Did he say something to you?" All Might's hands clenched into fists on his thighs, and he stared hard at the ground. "He did. He said I helped orchestrate his escape from a villain 6 years ago." Shota perked up. "Which villain?" This was the first thing resembling a lead into the kid's past that could help him understand how Isuku ended up on this path in life. If he understood how Isuku ended up like this, he could figure out how to convince him to stop. "He didn't name him, but he heavily implied the villain was powerful. And 6 years ago was when I fought the villain who did this to me." All Might placed a hand over his left side. "I think he was held captive by All for One." "That lines up with my theories," Shota agreed, though it sickened him to know he might be right. "He told me a little about the doctor that creates the Nomus, and it sounds personal to him. And some of the scars on his body." Recovery Girl nodded. "They looked surgical, too straight and precise to be random." Knowing some of what this kid had been through didn't make Shota feel any better about the situation. It just made his chest ache more. This kid had been through so much and continued to go through more and more. The universe needed to chill and give him a break. There had been no one in this kid's corner for years, possibly since before he'd been kidnapped as a kid. How he'd ever managed on his own after he escaped, Shota couldn't even begin to guess. Ghost showed up on the underground scene about 3 years ago, leaving an unexplained 3-year gap between Izuku's escape and his current activities. What had he done in that time period? Where had he gone? How had he learned everything he knew? Call him crazy, but he doubted they taught him knife fighting while torturing him, or how to scam his way into an apartment. "He mentioned something while watching the exams, too," Recovery Girl added. "Apparently, he used to know Bakugo." "Really?" Shota asked. That was interesting. "Young Bakugo did not appear to recognize him, however," All Might said. "I think young Izuku was going to talk to him, but congratulated his victory at the last second." Well, there went that avenue of questioning. Something to keep in the back of his mind, he supposed. But maybe he could dig into Bakugo's past a little bit and see if he could find anything about Izuku from back then. If they could trace how Isuku was taken in the first place, they might be able to see a pattern in current missing persons cases and localize where the doctor was operating. Yeah, he'd get right on that with all of his free time, and people wondered why he was always tired. Who had time to sleep with this much to do? Is there anything else? Not for the moment, All Might said. If you need help investigating him, I can pull a few strings for you. I'll keep that in mind. He was getting antsy to check on the two kids now, and made a quick exit to find them. They were outside with about half of the class lounging on the grass. Coda had called over some birds and rabbits, and Eri was hesitantly reaching out to pet a bunny. He had the strangest urge to film the moment, to show Hisashi later, but dismissed it. Video evidence could be used against them, and until they knew for sure the kids were safe, he wouldn't do a damn thing to jeopardize it. Isuku, the first to notice him, looked up after only 30 seconds or so, and Shota would blame the slow response on his concussion. He pushed himself to his feet and joined him on the steps. What now? We can head back to the apartment. Hisashi has to stick around for 1B's exams, but we don't need to stay here if you don't want to. He frowned in thought. If we take the car, how will he get home? He'll either take the bus or I'll come back to get him later. Eri and I can wait here, if that's easier. It doesn't really matter where we are right now, as long as the Shii Hisaikai can't get to us. He had a flash of a memory. Shy house key, and barely kept a smile off his face. God, he was never going to unhear that, was he? They won't touch you, Shota promised. He shrugged. Then it makes no difference if we're here or your place. Besides, I think interacting with other people is good for her. They both looked down at her petting a bunny, pure awe and wonder on her face. It's good for you too, you know, Shota said. When was the last time this kid interacted with people his age? Did he even know what a normal teenage life looked like? He shrugged and didn't comment. There was something off about him. Quieter, distracted, subdued, definitely. Was it the concussion and exhaustion, or was something else wrong? Is everything all right? Izuku didn't look surprised at the question, which pretty much meant the answer was no. Yeah, I'm fine. Shota narrowed his eyes. Pushing would only make Izuku close off even more, and he wasn't entirely sure what the nature of whatever this was. How could he encourage the kid to open up without accidentally setting off more triggers? You hungry yet? They're still serving lunch. Izuku hummed. All right, that wasn't quite the response he'd been expecting. My students can come too, if you want Eri to keep playing with them. I'm sure they wouldn't mind. Izuku tilted his head. If it's all right. So, the kid was worried about Eri's social life. Probably a valid concern, given Shota's beliefs on their current living arrangement. Hey, he called, getting everyone's attention. I'm taking Izuku and Eri to the cafeteria for lunch. Come if you want. Eri abandoned the bunny and bounced over to Izuku's side, taking his hand. Shota led the way down the path, all the kids following behind him like little ducklings. It wasn't the whole class, at least. Most kids had gone home. Koda, Uraraka, Jiro, Yayorozu, Tokuyami, and Asui were the only ones who'd stuck around. Not a typical group from his class, but they were some of the quieter, more well-behaved kids, so he didn't mind. Not like he was paying for them anyway. Lunch Rush was still providing food to the kids here for the rest of their regular exams. The hero course pared down the general classes to make room for their foundational heroics, but the rest of the courses still took the normal class load they needed today for their last few exams. Still, the lunchroom wasn't as crowded as it could be. It was late in the lunch hour, and a lot of remaining students had gone back to the classroom to study. and none of the Hero Corps students were here. Izuku tensed behind him. Shota kept walking towards the lunch line. Izuku knew, logically, he and Eri were safe here. Shota would be wasting his breath explaining it again. The kid would figure it out. After a moment, and some encouragement from Uraraka, Izuku stepped into line behind him. "Wow," Eri mumbled, now perched on Izuku's hip, looking over the counter into Lunch Rush's kitchen. "It's pretty neat, isn't it?" Uraraka said. "You can order anything you want here." "Anything?" Eri repeated. "That's right." Lunch Rush popped up, sliding over to their little group. "What can I get you, cuties?" Izuku did not care for the nickname, his face shuddering into a deadpan. "Katsudon for me. Eri, any preference?" "Can I have pancakes again?" she asked. Izuku's mouth twisted. "How about something with vegetables? Can you make a pot pie, Lunch Rush, on the sweeter side?" "I sure can," Lunch Rush agreed. Eri pouted. "I wanted pancakes," she muttered. "We can have them for breakfast in the morning," Izuku promised her. Lunch Rush took the rest of their orders, and they traipsed down the counter to wait at the end for their trays. It only took a few minutes, and Shota took Izuku's tray while Uraraka took Eri's, so Izuku didn't have to put Eri down while they picked out a table. Eri had to sit on Izuku's lap to see over the edge. "So, how long are you staying with Aizawa-sensei?" Uraraka asked. How long indeed, Shota wondered. Izuku shrugged. "Depends on how certain events go." "Will you be coming on the summer camp too?" Jiro asked. Izuku glanced at Shota. "I'll probably be gone by then." Shota twirled his ramen noodles on his chopsticks. "You'd be welcome to come along if you wanted. It's a secret location. Perfect place to lay low." Was he desperate to keep these kids somewhere he could see them? Maybe. Was he wrong about the summer camp being the perfect spot to lay low? No. "What's a summer camp?" Eri asked. She kept poking her pot pie rather than eating it, and the vegetables had spilled over the plate. Sweet potatoes, carrots, peas, and chicken swam in the gravy. "Camps are usually places kids go away from their parents to spend time with other kids," Asui explained. "Ours will focus on our training, but most have campfires and s'mores and sing-alongs." Eri only looked more confused. "I'll show you some videos of camps after lunch," Shota offered. He had exams to review, but this was by far more important. If Eri wanted to go on this camp, he might be able to convince Izuku to stick around longer. "They're a lot of fun," Uraraka said. "I hope you guys are able to come." "We'll see," Izuku allowed. "Eri, you have to eat more than the crust, okay?" She pouted and reluctantly speared a pea on her fork. The struggle to convince kids to eat their vegetables was universal, it seemed, regardless of circumstance. "What are you doing after lunch?" Uraraka asked. "Hanging out here," Izuku shrugged. "Aizawa-sensei has paperwork to do." "Do you want some of us to keep you company?" Uraraka offered. "It's always more fun with other people around." Shota expected him to turn down the offer. Izuku wasn't fond of people in crowds, and this group, while respectful, was still nosy as hell. But Izuku looked at Eri and gave the decision to her. "What do you think, Eri? You want to play with them this afternoon?" "Are we allowed?" she asked. "Sure we are," Jiro said. "We can kick a ball around the lawn, or play hide and seek, or tag." "I can show you the knife tricks Izu taught me," Eri offered. Shota choked on his ramen. On the one hand, it was generous of Eri to offer. On the other, why did she know knife tricks? How many did she know? He thought Izuku just gave her the knives to intimidate people. He hadn't realized Izuku actually taught her how to use them. He should have. It was obvious in hindsight. Of course, the kid who wears at least 10 knives any given day teaches his pseudo-little sister how to use them. But forgive him if he still didn't expect a 5-year-old to have knife training. That'd be neat, Jiro eventually responded. The rest of the table was just as shell-shocked as Shota. Why don't we leave the knife tricks for another day? Izuku said. They're better as a surprise. Eri nodded. Okay. Translation. Don't show anyone what she could do, so if she needed to fight any of them, she'd have a level of surprise. Oh God. A horrible thought just occurred to him. Did Eri also have a hidden knife on her? Kicking a ball sounds fun, Izuku said. I'll have to sit out, though. Concussion. Didn't Recovery Girl offer to heal it for you? Yaoyorozu asked. Yes, but I declined for personal reasons, Izuku said. It was a neat way to avoid explaining anything, Shota thought. Very professional, almost like what Ghost would say. Then we should do something all of us can do, Asawi said. That seemed like his cue to go. I'm sure you'll think of something. Just stay out of trouble. I'll be in the staff room. One of them can show you where it is if you need me, Shota said, collecting his empty tray. I'll also have my phone on. All he could do now was put his trust in his students not to scare the two of them off. That didn't mean he didn't pull up the security camera feed in another window and periodically check on them while he worked. It looked like someone had a deck of cards or possibly had Yaoyorozu make one, and they were playing some kind of card game on the lawn. Every now and then they'd burst out laughing, which he took as a good sign. Not that Izuku or Eri smiled much, but they never did, so it was hard to judge if they were having a good time. It didn't take him long to review all the exam footage. Some of the fights had been relatively short, while others, like Kirishima and Sato or Kaminari and Ashido, he'd been able to speed up the playback. They were the only two teams who'd failed altogether, but Sero hadn't made the best choices in his fight either, and Mineta had had to do all the work. He was just finishing up when all the teachers from the 1B exams filed in, collapsing at their desks. I don't know whose class is worse, Snipe said. You're both teaching them all to be demons. We're teaching them to survive, Shota corrected. Vlad nodded along with him. As the first-year teachers, they had the crucial job of setting up the building blocks of the rest of the kids' careers. If even one block was unsteady or cracked, they'd be killed in the line of duty within 5 years of graduation. They were both strict teachers in their own rights, though Vlad had a bigger mercy bone than Shota did. Did you see what your class did to me? Hisashi demanded. That was cruel. I'm never going to get the feeling of all those bugs crawling on me to go away. Shota grinned. Cruel, maybe, but effective. And when it came to life or death, there was no such thing as playing dirty. He was proud of Jiro and Koda. Speaking of kids, Midnight started. Aren't you missing two? They're on the lawn with a few students who stayed late to keep them company. Eri seems to like interacting with them, and Izuku seems to want her to socialize more. He pulled up the security feed again, and Hisashi leaned over his shoulder. I might be able to convince them to stick around long enough to go on the summer camp trip. No way, Hisashi said. How'd you pull that one off? It came up in conversation with the others, and they'd asked if he'd be coming since I'm his current guardian. Guardian wasn't quite the right word to use here, but Shota didn't know what other word applied. It was accurate enough, he supposed. He won't disrupt the students' training, will he? Vlad asked. Otherwise, it makes no difference to me. I doubt it. He might even have a few pointers for the kids. He's a good fighter. Vlad looked doubtful at that. Shota would defend the kid all night, though. He'd fought off several Yakuza and walked away with minor injuries and a concussion. The Yakuza had not been so lucky. "Can we debate this later? I'm in desperate need of a hot shower," Hisashi said. Taking pity on his husband, Shota closed up for the day and went with him to retrieve the kids. They'd stopped playing cards and were talking now, describing their courses at UA. Kota and Tokiyami had already left, and it looked like Asui was getting ready to leave as well. She probably had younger siblings to pick up from school, if Shota remembered correctly. She'd mentioned them in class a few times. "You listeners ready to roll on out?" Hisashi asked. "Sure," Izuku said, helping Eri to her feet. Their go bags hadn't left their sides all day, and Shota wondered what his students thought of them. "Hopefully we'll see you soon," Uraraka chirped. "Take care." "Yeah, take care," Izuku echoed, offering a small smile. The two of them followed him and Hisashi back to the car and climbed into the back seat. "Did you two have fun today?" Hisashi asked. "Dark shadow colored with me," Eri said. "I've never colored with someone's shadow before." "You know, I haven't either. I might have to ask Tokiyami about that," Hisashi said. He continued to ask about their day, even prodding at Izuku to know what he thought of the exams. Shota leaned his head back on the seat and closed his eyes, letting their voices fade to the background. For the moment, Izuku and Eri were safe with him. They'd get dinner sorted, let the kids have baths or showers or whatever, and get them ready for bed. Tomorrow, Izuku would get his concussion healed, and then he'd probably want to take off again right away, disappearing who knew where to avoid the Shie Hasaikai, the ones responsible for the quirk-erasing bullets currently becoming a problem on the streets. He'd have to pass that tip along to the police and let them deal with the Yakuza. Wait. Hold the phone. He shot upright in his seat and whipped around to face the kids, silencing whatever conversation they were having. "Why the hell does the Shie Hasaikai care about Eri?" Hisashi swore under his breath. Izuku blinked at him, then tilted his head. "It's really taken you this long to ask?" "There has been a lot going on. I haven't had time to think about it. Now I have." "So?" Eri shrank in her seat, hair falling in front of her face. Sighing, Izuku looked out the window. "Her quirk is a crucial part of those bullets they're making." Shota blinked, trying to read between the lines on what Izuku was saying. Hisashi let out a nervous chuckle. "I'm sorry. Run that by me again?" Izuku dragged his gaze from the window to Shota. "She was an ingredient to them." Shota was going to be sick. She was what? The car swerved as Hisashi violently pulled over, all the passengers crying out in varying levels of swears. "Hisashi!" Shota snapped. Hisashi twisted in his seat. "You're telling me that they were using this sweet little girl to make quirk-erasing bullets?" Eri whimpered. "My quirk is a curse. Chisaki said—" "Nothing that man said was right," Izuku interrupted. "Your quirk is not a curse, it's a gift. You'll be able to do amazing things with it one day if you want to." "Where's Chisaki right now?" Hisashi asked, his voice dangerously low. Most people who knew the pair of them were more worried about Shota's temper. He was less likely to hide his anger and deal with it quickly and succinctly. Hisashi, for as much as he wore his heart on his sleeve, had the far more violent temper. "Despite my best efforts otherwise, somewhere in the Shie Hisaikai compound, probably," Izuku said. "I should have made sure he was dead when I left. Probably used his quirk to put himself back together the second I was out the door." "And just out of curiosity, where is the Shie Hisaikai compound?" Hisashi asked. "Do not answer that," Shota cut in. "Sho." "Zashi." "Shota, those monsters." Storming their compound without proper documentation is only going to get you in more trouble. We need to make sure we put a stop to the bullets they're making, too. They must have reserve stock to have gone this long without her." Isuku nodded. "And now they're running out, so they're desperate to get her back." "I'm sorry for causing so much trouble," Eri whispered, sniffling back tears. "Oh, sweetie, none of this is your fault," Hisashi said. "You didn't do anything wrong, okay?" She sniffed again. "I know. How about some ice cream? That'll cheer you up," Hisashi said. And that was how they ended up eating ice cream for dinner. Not just little scoops on a cone, either. Hisashi ordered them all full sundaes, complete with toppings and the quintessential cherry. Eri, who Shota was beginning to suspect had quite the sweet tooth, was over the moon with this turn of events. Izuku was happy she was happy, but had some opinions on their meal. "I want it on record that I have never once given her ice cream for dinner. I always made sure she had vegetables and healthy shit. One day with you so-called adults, and this is what you feed her." "Can't help it if we're cooler," Hisashi said, winking at Izuku to show he was teasing. "We're staying with them a little longer, right?" Eri asked. She'd smeared chocolate sauce all over her face, and her eyes were wide, with the rising sugar high. If bribing her with sugar was how they kept these kids safe, Shota was willing to buy out a candy store. Izuku's smile was painful. "Sure, Eri. We'll stay a little longer." "At least until the Shie Hisaikai is taken care of," Shota said. "I'll pass on the info you gave me to the team investigating the bullets, and if you can tell me the compound you rescued Eri from, they'll get a raid team together in a few days." "So, you can totally crash with us for a week or two," Hisashi said. "We can set up a futon in the guest room, too, so you don't have to sleep on the couch all the time." "That'd be good," Izuku said, falling back into that odd, somber mood he'd been in right before lunch. "How does that sound, Eri? You want to spend a week with them?" "Yes," she cheered. "Ice cream for dinner every night and pancakes for breakfast." "Maybe not for dinner," Hisashi hedged. "But we can have it for dessert. You need your veggies to grow as tall as us." She pulled a face at that, clearly not as concerned with her height as everyone else. Shota scooped up some of his strawberry ice cream and hid a smile behind his spoon. He could get used to this. Hisashi was made for kids, and watching him interact with Izuku and Eri, drawing out small smiles or little giggles, warmed some inner cavity in Shota's chest. Where was his rationality? They were still fighting to convince Izuku to stay beyond this case. He shouldn't let himself get too attached when there was a strong possibility the kid would disappear into the wind and take Eri with him. He'd only be setting himself up for heartbreak. Ice cream devoured, faces and hands cleaned, they finally made it to the apartment. Hisashi took the first shower, still claiming he had bugs crawling all over him, and Shota took it upon himself to get the futon set up in the guest room. "You don't mind sharing a room, right? We can figure something else out if you'd rather have your own space," Shota said. He and Hisashi would have to sleep in the living room, which wouldn't be ideal, but the kids came first. If this ended up being long-term, they might have to move. Ugh, he hated moving. Izuku snorted. "You saw my apartment. What did you think we were doing before?" "Izu keeps the monsters away," Eri said, a little too serious for comfort. Shota had the distinct impression she wasn't referring to the imaginary monsters most kids feared in the closet. Hers were real, and more likely to use the front door. "No monsters in this apartment," he assured her. She looked at something in the hall. "Yes, there is!" He and Izuku whipped around, reaching for their weapons. Oreo, his cat, sat in the doorway, tail swishing behind her. He let out a breath. "That's one of the cats I was telling you about." Kneeling down, he held out his hand. Oreo hesitantly stepped over to him, keeping a careful eye on the kids. Neither of them moved, and once Oreo was in reach, Shota grabbed her by the scruff. "This is Oreo," Hisashi named her. Izuku snorted and returned his knife to its hiding spot. "Didn't sound like a name you'd come up with." Eri reached up to pet Oreo's tail. "I'm not good with names," he said. He wasn't too proud to admit that. Hisashi called dibs on naming everything, long before we ever got married. "You would have called both of your cats Cat, wouldn't you?" Izuku asked. They're as likely to respond to that as they are their actual names. So, probably. The only cat he'd named was the first stray he'd brought home, before he and Hisashi moved in together. He'd named him Dumpster because that was where he'd found him. Hisashi was horrified and banned him from naming anything ever again. "So soft," Eri whispered, lightly stroking Oreo's tail. Shota carefully sat cross-legged on the floor, keeping a tight grip on Oreo to prevent her from bolting for cover. Eri ran a finger over Oreo's head, ever gentle. Oreo squirmed, because the cat was contrary like that, and after letting Eri pet her for a few minutes, he released Oreo. The black and white cat darted out of the room, nearly tripping Hisashi, who'd just come out of the bathroom. "Shower is free if one of you guys wants to wash up," Hisashi announced. "Yeah, I think we will. Come on, Eri, bath time," Izuku said. She picked up her bag and trotted into the bathroom, standing up on her toes to reach the light switch. Izuku was only a few steps behind her, his own bag in his hand, and flicked the switch before shutting the door. They made things for kids to reach light switches, right? He'd have to look into that. Even if their stay here was temporary, it couldn't cost that much money. It wouldn't be that big of an investment, and it was practical. She should be able to turn the light on in the bathroom by herself. And the guest room, too, probably. Hisashi joined him in the guest room, plopping down on the floor beside him and leaning back against the bed. "What are you thinking about so hard?" "Light switches," he answered, purely for the look of utter confusion that crossed his husband's face. "All right. I'll bite. Why?" "Eri can't reach them. They make things to help, right?" "Probably. They make everything." Hisashi pulled out his phone, and less than a minute later, flipped the screen around to show him. "These are adorable, and I want 20. Shota snorted and scooted back to lean against him. "We don't even have that many switches in the apartment." "But look at this one. It's a black kitty and a white kitty, or this sun and moon, or the rainbow and the rain cloud." Shota pointed to a picture. "She would love the unicorns. Like the cats, one was black and one was white." Hisashi clicked on the links. "They're only $10. How many do you want?" He thought about it rationally. "At least 2. Get 4 just in case." "You got it. Next day shipping, don't mind if I do." Hisashi had the order placed in minutes, and then he leaned his head on Shota's shoulder. "We're in deep, aren't we?" "Way too deep," Shota agreed. "It's only been a day, but I would kill for these kids. In fact, I desperately want to. Who's arranging the raid for the Shie Hisaikai base?" "I don't know," Shota said. "I still need to call them about that. It would be better to do it now, while the kids were washing up, but he hadn't gotten a location from Izuku yet, and he didn't feel like moving right this second. Thank God, he'd made sure to schedule no patrols today in expectation of the exams. He wasn't even meeting with Shinso again until after the summer camp. Zashi hummed. "Tell them Present Mike volunteers to be part of the raid. I have some choice words for this Chisaki guy." Shota bit back a laugh. That phrase had a different meaning when the one saying it could cause sonic damage with those words. "I'll see what I can do." He reached up and ran a hand through Hisashi's damp hair. For a few minutes, they enjoyed the peace and quiet in each other's company. They didn't often get to just be like this, and they treasured every moment they could. "How are we going to convince Isuku to stay?" Hisashi asked quietly. "I don't know," Shota said. "He's been through so much, and he's automatically distrustful of everyone around him. We can show him all the love in the world, but I'm worried it won't be enough," Hisashi said. "You have to take him on the training trip, okay? We need the time to show him we care." "I'll try," Shota promised. "I can redecorate in here while you're gone, figure out a way to get a second bed in, and get the two a little more privacy." Shota hummed. "If this does end up being long-term, and that's a big if right now, should we consider moving?" "I want a house," Hisashi answered immediately. "We'd need a minimum of 4 bedrooms, and I want space for them to run around. Maybe a home gym for you and Izuku to train." Hisashi had apparently already thought of this. Quite a bit. And Shota thought he was being irrational. He hadn't gotten so far as a wish list yet for a new place. Although, everything he'd put on it, Hisashi apparently already had. A bedroom for each of them, plus a guest room, would be impossible to find in an apartment. They might as well buy a house. That sounds nice. Would telling them we're looking at houses scare them away or convince them to stay, do you think? Hisashi asked. Right now, it would scare them off. Maybe after the trip we can ask them about it. Yeah, okay, Hisashi said. For now, I'll do what I can in here for the little listeners. Thank you. I know I kind of dropped this on you last night, but... Hisashi leaned up to peck him on the cheek. I support you no matter what, and those kids need us to show them what a family is, what love is. I could never turn my back on them. He nuzzled into Hisashi's hair. Truth is, Hisashi went on, they're already part of our family, whether they stay or not. But Izuku called you last night. I think he's figuring out how to trust you. I hope so, Shota said. I hope so. We have to trust them, too, Hisashi said. He reached out and found one of Shota's hands and wrapped his fingers around it. It goes both ways, and that might mean letting them go so they'll come back when they're ready. The thought hurt to think about. With the League still out there, knowing Izuku's past connection to it, he couldn't fathom the thought of letting this kid go out there alone. What if they found him? Would he be kidnapped and turned into a Nomu? Would Shota have to fight some monster-fied version of him? Geez, his imagination was running wild. He needed to sleep soon. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. I'm going to do everything I can to convince them to stay. This includes all kinds of bribery. I swear, if Eri tells me she wants a horse, I might go get her a horse. Please do not bring a horse into the apartment. Our landlord and all the neighbors will kick us out. We're moving soon anyways. It's fine. So now this new house needs a stable. It might. Shota snorted and hid his face in Hisashi's hair. You're ridiculous. It's an art, Hisashi said. Hey, what are we going to do with them the rest of the night? It's too early for bed. Can't just put on TV either because of Izuku's concussion, Shota noted. They were playing cards earlier. That's probably a safe activity. I have to go find the deck of cards. Hisashi leapt up and out of the room, searching the apartment for where they last left the cards. The kids came out of the bathroom to find him tearing up the hall closet, coats in a mess on the ground, and snow boots blocking the hallway. Eri was dressed in a long-sleeved shirt that bunched over her hands and reached down to her knees, a prancing unicorn proudly stamped on the front, and black leggings. Izuku started. The bandage around his head was gone, his curls wet and flat against his head. As long as he didn't reopen the wound, it should be fine. He wore a faded All Might shirt and basketball shorts with a hole in the side that showed a guest was from a losing battle with one of the kid's knives. "Don't worry about it," Shota said. "I know they're in this closet. I know it," Hisashi called out. His voice was muffled by the closet. "What's he looking for?" Eri asked. "He was jealous he missed out on cards with you, but he doesn't know where he left ours." "I have the one from this afternoon," Izuku offered, swinging his backpack around and pulling it out of the front pocket. Hisashi sat up from the closet. "That'll work. Let me just—" To clean up his mess, he threw it all back in the closet, no rhyme or reason, didn't hang any of the coats back up, and shoved the door closed before it could all fall out again. Shota blinked at him. "You're going to regret that later." "Problem for future me. Let's go." "One sec. Izuku." The kid looked back at him. "The location for the compound." His expression tightened. "Yeah, okay." He went into the guest room with Shota, writing it out on a piece of paper. Whether he knew letting Hisashi overhear the location was a bad idea or not, Shota was grateful. "Go play. I'll join you when I'm done." Izuku hesitated in the doorway, glanced in the hall, and then shut the door. "You should know about Chisaki's quirk." Shota raised a brow. Ghost wasn't the type to voluntarily hand over intel. This must be important. "I'm all ears." "Touch-based. He can deconstruct anything and put it back together however he wants. It works on himself and other people." Deconstructing and reconstructing, huh? Shota glanced at the wall, imagining Eri and Hisashi on the other side shuffling the cards. "He used it on Eri, didn't he?" "Yeah," Izuku spat. "I stabbed that fucker 10 times and slashed his throat, but it wasn't enough to kill him. I should have decapitated him when I had the chance, or stabbed him in the eye." Kid sure didn't hold back. "Okay, slow down on the gory fantasies." "That wasn't gory, and you know it." "You were building up to it. I'm cutting the rant off at the pass." Izuku smirked. "So you don't want to hear about—" Shota lunged forward and opened the door, pushing Izuku out into the hall. "Nope, I do not. Go play cards." Cackling, Izuku went down the hall to join Eri and Hisashi, while Shota went to his bedroom to make the call. With any luck, the Shie Hasaikai wouldn't be a problem for much longer. Now all Shota had to do was figure out how to earn these kids' trust in such a short amount of time. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 4 of Always Chasing After Something. Chapter 5 will be up next. Let me know your thoughts, reactions, comments that you have about this chapter and the fic so far. I think this is such a good one, and there's so much fluff going on in this fic, right? So much family dynamics going on. Hisashi and Shota definitely getting ahead of themselves, already plans of buying a home. And the fact that Izuku really wants to promote opportunities for Eri to be able to spend time with other people and socialize more, ice cream for dinner, the whole shebang. It's just such a good chapter. I love how this one is. And then that underlying tension from Izuku, those sad moments where he's really kind of reverting back to this thought of, well, I'm planning to leave anyway. So let me know your thoughts, reactions again. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.